All right, wonderful. Well, thank you everybody so much for being here. My name is Newton Kimberly. I am the career catalyst for careers with social impact and humanities and the arts here at Ohio Wesleyan. And I'm very excited to introduce you to our wonderful panelists who have joined us for the Success Series, the International Studies Edition. These wonderful panelists have varying degrees of what they've been doing, kind of how they've used their degree. And I'm really excited for them to talk with you about the different things that they've learned and the different things that they can hopefully help you make a little bit easier. So we can go ahead and get started. If you would, just please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what your degrees were in at Ohio Wesleyan, degree or degrees, and a little bit about kind of your journey since leaving Ohio Wesleyan. And Shelley, we can start with you.
If we didn't have a moment where someone talked while muted. So my name is Shelley Reeves. I graduated in 2016. I double majored in international studies and Black World studies, and I double minored in women gender studies and English. So I often say I looked at the intersection of how we communicate through art, and specifically thinking about how policy interacts with not only the art that we interact with on a daily basis, but how do we tell our stories. And so after I left Ohio Wesleyan, I came back to Cleveland. I worked for a political campaign. Unfortunately, we lost. And from there, I went back to museums. So I worked at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Before that, I was a fund developer for a community development corporation, then went to the Cleveland Museum of Art, managed a mobile art studio called Studio Go, doing community engagement work there. And then moving to the local NPR PBS station, doing special projects focused on racism as a public health crisis and the impacts of toxic stress. There, I also worked on a national documentary and worked on a podcast, a series of other just like journalistic things. From there, moved on to where I am now, which is at IDEO, which is a design thinking consulting firm that's global. I technically work out of the Chicago office, but I still live in Cleveland. In addition to that, I also have a organization, a startup called Reframe History, which is focused on keeping stories alive through archiving the past, recording the present, and advocating for the future. It acts as a virtual African American museum where our street corners are our galleries and our everyday objects are a collection. And for that, I'm building a mobile application. So that's me, and I teach yoga. So yeah, I've been real busy, but that is all the different things I've done since I left Ohio Wesleyan.
Awesome, thank you so much. A lot of amazing things in there. Hank, we can go ahead and go over to you.
So my name's Hank. I graduated in 2014. At OWU, I majored in English and religion, minored in philosophy, and I declared international studies, but I ended up not finishing it, mostly because I didn't want to have to take the second year of the language requirement. I took a second year German pass-fail instead of for a grade, so I couldn't qualify for the major. But yes, during OWU and a little bit after, I worked for a nonprofit in Delaware, Helpline. And then I went to UChicago for my first master's in religious studies, but I mostly did like religion and global politics, basically. And then I went back to Columbus, was just doing odd jobs like bartending and stuff as I was working on an application for PhD programs. Ended up getting another master's in political science at OU in Athens. And then I am now at the University of Pennsylvania, PhD in political science. It's my second year. My main fields are international relations, political theory, and Middle Eastern politics. So mostly been in academia since OU.
Well, accomplishing a lot of great things though, and that many degrees is very impressive. So we, of course, we wish you luck on your current one. Morgan, over to you.
So hi, I'm Morgan Williams. I graduated in 2017. I was an international studies, politics and government double major and a Spanish and history double minor. Post Ohio Wesleyan, I traveled around Europe a little bit. I was one of those people who never said I was a senior until like I graduated. So I traveled around Europe for a little bit. I worked in a library system, like stacking shelves on books, and then interned for like the third time with my current boss. So I currently work at I work for a United States senator in Delaware, managing his short-term, long-term calendar, as well as his political, official, travel, jack of all trades, kind of, Congress, Senate work. So me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Very, very, very good work. And I know very stressful work, but I know it's very rewarding due to the conversation we had earlier this month. Well, awesome. Well, kind of diving in, I do have a couple questions set up just to talk about, your experience with international studies, the appeal, the benefits, those different kinds of things. And of course, there's not going to be any particular order. So as you feel ready to answer a question, please just go ahead and jump in. But thinking about your time at Ohio Wesleyan, coming in as a freshman, kind of learning about all the different degrees, what about international studies or the kind of work that goes with international studies was initially appealing to you coming into the university?
I could start. So I actually wasn't originally an international studies major. I actually was pre-med. I really wanted to help people through medicine, and I really hated chemistry. So I think what really drew me in was I really like to travel. And I really liked learning about new cultures and history and that sort of thing. And I sort of took a gamble, for lack of a more eloquent story. And I think what really kept me in the major was you can really take it any way you want. I took a lot of different classes and a lot of different topics, and I'm more of a big picture kind of person. So I like to see how things interact and the ways in which, you can combine political economy with like health policy with, all kinds of other things. And a lot of my classes like were really at the macro level, and I really enjoyed that. So I guess it's really what kept me going. And yeah.
So I came in as an English and religion major explicitly, like that's what I wanted to study, and that's what I left with. But my freshman year, a lot of my upperclassmen friends were international studies majors, and so they piqued my interest. And then just thinking about it more, like all the skills that people wanted for grad school in religion were accomplished by an IS degree, like language requirements, having a grounded method, in my case, like political science. So I ended up adding it. And I think I wanted to stay that way because in both religion and English, I took most of my classes with Susan Gunasti and Nancy Komarow, and I mostly did like post-colonial stuff. And while it like was interesting using like literature and stuff to think through that, I was always more interested in like social scientific questions, more like practical questions. And I thought that international studies, international relations was a way to get at that. But other than that, I would also second the things that Morgan said in terms of like being a big picture thinker and like wanting to see the connections.
And for me, I, in high school, got one of those big career books, and I went through it looking for the ideal career and the ideal major. And very similar to Morgan, I love to travel. And so when I saw that there was a major where potentially I would travel, and then most likely for my job, I would need to travel, I knew that was the right major for me. So when I started at Ohio Wesleyan, I had one major, international studies, very interested in developing countries in Africa. And so I then continued to take more classes. And since the international studies degree is so flexible and interdisciplinary, I started taking classes in all of these other departments. And that is how I ended up with the multiple majors and minors, which I know I'm not alone in.
Oh, and definitely not alone with switching. And I think everybody touched a little bit on that, but everything that you come in with, of course, changes during your time here. I actually started as a technical theater major at Ohio Wesleyan and moved to sociology and psychology. So thinking a little bit about definitely your time at Ohio Wesleyan and the different coursework you might have went through for international studies, the different professors, specific courses, different things you learned. How would you say that time really helped prepare you for the role that you're in now?
So any class with Professor Choi, I just found to be like, he somehow makes it really kind of what you're interested in, especially with his big research project that he always does at the end of the year. I just found that to be really like fun and interesting. And it's, you know, I got to do a lot of research on topics that like we don't normally talk about in class. Like I did one on like agriculture, and that was like, you know, not really super talked about, but it was like really cool to learn about. What else? I actually prepared something. My boss is on the Foreign Relations Committee. So a lot of the topics and classes that I took just happened to work out on, you know, what he touches on every day with meeting with foreign heads of state. And, you know, he's chair of the State Foreign Operations and Related Programs Subcommittee. So a lot of, you know, interacting with, you know, developing nations who are sanctioned or, you know, stuff like that. And it's just, you know, you don't really think that the class with Dr. Franklin on protests will somehow make its way into your real life work. And somehow it just happened to work out in my favor that like I get to use the really interesting, you know, classes that I took that didn't really have at the time a real understanding of how that was going to play into my real life. And it sort of worked out for the best.
For me, there's two classes that I remember very distinctly, which is international organizations. I have worked in large organizations, most of them nonprofits, and now this one for profit. And a lot of the things that I learned about in that class, I've definitely reflected back on as I've moved through these different organizations since leaving OWU. And the other one was senior seminar. I was able to pull together and really see like the English part of what I was doing and the women and genders part and the Black World Studies part and put it together in a way that it gave me clarity about what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I just really appreciated being able to show up to that class fully and talking with people about the readings, which sometimes I didn't always understand, but someone did in that class. And then moving towards really having that moment of saying like, oh, all of these things connect, although they might not have until that moment.
So for me, I mean, I counted most of my religion classes toward the major with Professor Gunasti, and especially because I had such a close relationship with her, like I was able to pursue most of the things I was interested in her classes, took an independent study with her. But in terms of some of the other classes I took, I think both Choi's Global Issues and Franklin's Human Rights class set me up really well for graduate school, because Choi like covered pretty much all like the basic topics you have to know for a degree, a grad degree in international relations. And then like Franklin's class, I think was the first one that challenged me to write. It was an honors writing class. It was the first one that challenged me to write an actual like 25-page paper. And I had no idea what I was doing. It was my very first one. I messed up really badly, but like, it was a really useful exercise and like something that like gave me an edge in grad school that some of my other friends coming right out of undergrad like didn't have. So I think overall, the major helps prepare you with the concepts and the workload for grad school if that's something that you want to pursue.
Well, and that's actually a perfect transition because our next question is about grad school. So thinking about graduate school, I know it's always a big debate between students if they need to go, if they should go, if they want to go. But just I'm curious if all of you could just talk through your thought process of once you left Ohio Wesleyan, thinking about graduate school, whether you decided to go or not, and kind of what, you know, just how you arrived at that decision, because I know it can be a tough one.
So I did not go to graduate school. I didn't even consider graduate school. I was kind of done with school when I graduated. I mean, that's sort of changed, I think now, but I also don't need a graduate degree to do the work I'm in and, you know, to grow, which is not the same in a lot of places. You know, a lot of the topics that Ohio Wesleyan prepared me for are things that I deal with every day. And, you know, they do a really good job of preparing you. And I got away with not having to go in my career path. my boss likes to talk people out of graduate school, specifically law school. He just, I mean, he's different than everyone else, but he always says, go to graduate school to get a degree in something that you really will need. And I didn't necessarily need to be focused in one specific area or one specific thing. And could I go back at some point and get it? Yeah, money's always been a factor as well. Graduate degrees are expensive, and I was spent a lot of money at Ohio Wesleyan, so I didn't really necessarily need to take out more debt at this point in my life. Could I see myself going back? Of course. The pursuit of knowledge is something that is always fun to me specifically, but I just weighed the pros and cons, and at that point in my life, like I just wasn't ready. So
I feel like I'm a little bit in the middle of both of you, Hank and Morgan. So I'll go next. So I didn't think about graduate school until my senior seminar. And Professor K was like, have you thought about getting a PhD? And I was like, absolutely not. But they do have puffy hats, and that sounds fun. And so at that moment, I started thinking about like graduate school is not a place where you get a puffy hat, but potentially a place that I belonged into. But I was tired. And when I say tired, I mean like when I was walking across the stage, which I had to stand up for most of it on stage because I was the senior class president and I had to speak at graduation. Like I literally, me and my heels were ready for a nap, and I took one for 3 months. And so there was no applying to graduate school. There was no like thinking of this transition. It was like, I need to make it to graduation day and hopefully not mess up on this speech. So after that, I was like, I'll take a year and then I'll like go to grad school in Europe. And then I got a really cool job and wasn't ready for grad school in Europe. And then I applied to social work school and got in, and they didn't give me enough money to justify a social work degree because you don't really get paid as a social worker. And so then I was like, that might not be my jam. And now I'm considering graduate school again, kind of with that. What is the degree that I need to further my ability to do my job or my ability to make more money or all of those things, compared to before where I saw a graduate degree as like, I want to explore these topics. I still want to explore the same topics. I'm probably going to get the same degrees that I thought about when I was graduating Ohio Wesleyan, but I'm going to go into them with a bit more intention with the experience I've had, because I'm going because I really want to go. And I'm going to figure out a way to make somebody pay for it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could obviously like give a long speech about grad school since I've been there for a decade now. So I've always wanted to go to grad school since even before I was an undergrad. That was something I decided, something I told all the professors I worked with about. So they always gave me a lot of very real advice about how to navigate things and whether I should go. So the first thing is, if you have a faculty member affirming your decision to go to grad school, then you should go. But if they hesitate or they don't tell you to, don't go right off the bat like that. The second thing, like finances definitely matter. OU funds half of their master's programs. So my poli-sci master's had full tuition coverage and I had a small stipend. Athens is kind of cheap to live in. So I only had to take out like a couple loans and I found a job on the side. So like it didn't really hurt me in any way. You should never go to a PhD program that's not funded. So like Penn's funds me very generously, like tuition, health insurance, stipends, $35,000 a year for the first 3 years, $30,000 for the last 2. And I'm still bartending on the side just to have some supplemental income. But yeah, U Chicago only gave me half tuition. And if I die in student debt, it's because U Chicago is really expensive and I didn't pay off those that interest. So like that is something that you always have to be aware of. In my case, all my loans are federal. If you take out federal loans after 2010, they qualify for Obama era loan forgiveness. So I'm not really that stressed out about it. I'll try to make income-based payments for 20 years, then they go away and I have to worry about $30,000 to the IRS, not $160K to the government. So yeah, finances matter. Always go to a funded program. if at least partially funded. And the last thing is like master's, PhD, like it really depends on like where you're at and what you want to do. If you're like curious, you think you can do it, but you want to get your feet wet, like find a funded master's program. They're going to show you what grad school workload is like. They're going to get you to start asking questions. And that way you don't have to commit to a 5-year program. And so after 2 years, you have a degree, additional skills, you might be more hireable in certain things. My buddy at OU did that, and that's how he started working for the State Department. He didn't want to go to PhD programs after, but the master's helped him get the foot in the door. PhD, you should only really honestly go to if it's like a top 30 program. And I know that sounds like really elitist, but like I tried and failed to get into PhD programs, like a couple different rounds. But just the academic market for jobs is so tight, and the network matters for academic jobs so much. And also just for like other more sort of like elite jobs, like higher up in the State Department and stuff like that. Like if you're transitioning from PhD to those jobs, they want to see that you went to an elite school. So if you want a PhD, really try to apply to those schools. And if you don't get in, it's not an assault on your character, it's not an assault on your self-worth. These things have like 600 applications, so much of it is luck. But if you don't get in, maybe just try to pivot to something else. And that's just to be realistic. When I applied this last round to get into UPenn, I had 2 other offers, UC Irvine and University of Virginia. And they were both attractive offers. But if I didn't get into a PhD program this round, I was prepared to just be done with grad school, because at some point you just have to accept that it's not going to happen. And I was resigned to that choice. But I think, yeah, finances, top programs, thinking about where you're at and what you want to do, all that should weigh into your decision on whether or not to go. And at the end of the day, it's really not about your intelligence, and it has no bearing on your intelligence. So if you identify as an academic, don't take it personally if you don't get in.
And I'd definitely like to echo your piece about talking to professors. I mean, they have such a good sense on the pulse of this kind of thing, especially talking through both with, shameless plug, Career Connection and your professors to kind of talk about the best path and trajectory for you. But I feel like professors are an untapped resource. I feel like students just, go to the courses, talk with them there, and then leave, and don't think to use them as additional resources. So very happy to hear you say that, and always happy to pitch that moving forward. So thinking about your general time at Ohio Wesleyan, all the years you were here, thinking about the different skills that you learned, the different things that you developed, if you had to pick a single most valuable skill that you were able to learn or hone or even just get your feet wet with during your time here, what would you say that was?
Writing ability. There's a lot of people get hired nowadays that don't know how to write. And I don't know if it's like older people say it's like the internet generation, like they never had to go to an actual library to get a book, and we have computers and stuff, but like writing ability is the number one biggest hiring skill in at least in my world. We hire people all the time that just don't know how to write, and we think we can teach them. And I wouldn't say I'm the greatest writer in the world, but you have to be able to just writing in general, just big writing person.
Mine was networking and being able to be in rooms with people with very different backgrounds and very different experiences, and still being able to translate like a degree that was a little all over the place at first into something that people understood what I was saying. So I have used that every single day of my life since leaving Ohio Wesleyan. And I've had different people kind of compliment me on my ability to talk about really nebulous concepts in a concise way and like move a project forward or fundraise tons of money for something. Or I was a grant writer for a bit, and being able to like really market something that we don't even know what we're doing yet. So that's one of the number one things for me.
I was actually going to say both those things, so I'll just double up on Morgan and Shelley. Like writing and socialization, like OU taught you not only how to write well, but like how to make an argument. And even now at like Penn, teaching Ivy League undergrads, like even in the Ivy Leagues, like they don't know how to make an argument, They might have like a good vocabulary base because they clearly passed a test really well, but like they can't make an argument and carry it throughout a paper. And at OWU, I was taught to do that. Besides just like taking a lot of nonfiction writing classes in English, taking the writing classes in poli-sci, like you just learn how to write. And then, yeah, I would double up on socialization as well, because I think having so many different friend groups at OWU, including ones that I was like actually learning from outside of the classroom, you just learn how to interact with a broad range of people. And that is such a necessary skill to like make substantive introductory connections after graduation, and especially for like jobs. Like being able to like small talk and like just being able to schmooze someone and like make them feel good and like talk to them is like a really important skill. And like at OWU, because I met so many people, like that's what you just naturally learn to do. Like you learn to be social, you learn to be warm, you learn to like want to hold a conversation. So yeah.
Well, and this is a great start to that last thing for Helena, for both you and Meg, just meeting alumni in your field, being able to be comfortable talking with them and just hearing their experiences and taking it all in stride to help you with yours. So thank you again. I know I've said it already, but thank you again for being here. So I really just have two more things. The second to last one is, one, if you could give one piece of advice to current students, whether it be about job searching or kind of finding what your passion is, employment, really anything that you could give advice that you wish you knew at where Helena, Meg, and anybody watching this is right now, what advice would you give?
If you have an internship or a job or whatever during undergrad, stay in touch with your boss. Their connections are usually pretty good, wherever that may be. And I have two, I'm sorry. I'm gonna break the rule, but the second piece is it's okay not to know what you wanna do. I spent a month traveling around Europe and refused to call myself a senior and refused to believe that I graduated. And that's okay for like a hot second. It's okay if you don't really know what you wanna do and you sort of have time to figure it out. I suppose I was friends with a lot of business majors and they had, careers in like January figured out. And I was like, I don't even know what day of the week it is, let alone like what I want to do for the rest of my life. And, it's okay not to know, and it works out. So confidence and your ability to like figure it out.
I'm going to build and break the rules and also do two. So I'm going to build on not knowing what you want to do. I don't know what I want to do. And via Instagram and my LinkedIn, I'm very successful. So I think that it's something where like you will continue to evolve and transition and grow as a person. And as you grow, there's potential that what you want to do or the degrees that you want and all of those different things are going to change, and to give yourself grace in moments of great transition. If you would have told me when I graduated OWU that I would be working at a design consulting firm, I would have laughed at you, because I was working at museums or I was working in the State Department. There was no in between. And now I'm like doing something very different. And then my two actual ones is that the cover letter is the most important thing, unless you know someone. It is an opportunity where you can really show yourself and be creative. It doesn't have to be super formulaic in a way where it feels like everyone else's. I found out for the job that I have that I was the #1 candidate, and it was my cover letter that put me as that person, because I answered a question that they knew they had and I answered it in a unique way. And so it's really an opportunity. And so to build on that, if you do know someone, or if Ohio Wesleyan has someone in the network of the place you want to be or where you're applying for, use that network. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to the CFO of Amtrak, and now I have a bi-weekly meeting with their community engagement person, and like having these really invigorating conversations about infrastructure. And that might turn into a new job for me in a couple of months or a couple of years. And so there are just so many doors that the OWU alumni might open up. And so really use their resources, especially after college. I'm always sending my cover letters, my resumes, asking about new fields and is there anyone in that field that OWU has? So just really using that network. I know I said like 5 things, but I will pass the baton.
And I'm mostly just gonna double what everyone said. I mean, on the one hand, I did know what I wanted to do like before I came to college, and it didn't really help me. My goals still changed and things still changed, and I still learned and adapted. So like, it's literally okay to not know what you want to do. But then, yeah, my piece of advice was going to be similar to Shelley's in the sense that just make a lot of friends and be social. Um, these are people who like you'll be able to like use those networks after you graduate. And like my friends from OWU are all doing like really amazing things. Um, like 2 of my friends, one was poli-sci, one was international studies. Like they both went to Harvard Kennedy after, and like now they're doing things with the World Bank and elections organizing. And then yeah, I have friends doing other stuff like teaching, et cetera, et cetera. But also like you are an undergrad, you should have time for leisure, and like you shouldn't feel pressured to be working or trying to be productive all the time. So like having just friends to be friends with is really important. And when you graduate and you go into the world where like no one's partying and socializing anymore, like especially when you feel lonely, like these are the connections you're going to have to fall back on, and these are the friendships that are going to sort of carry you through the troubled times of adulthood. So make friends both for personal reasons and professional reasons. You're muted.
Like we said, it wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if somebody didn't do it. Oh, geez. Thank you all for your wonderful insights and your answers, your very well thought out answers to these questions. Lastly, I'd just like to open the floor. If you have any closing thoughts, anything else you'd like to add that we didn't get to touch on, any advice, any information, really anything, I'd just like to open the floor one last time, and then we'll kind of dive into the questions that Megan and Helena might have.
I would just say enjoy the time you have. I miss Ohio Wesleyan. I'm in Ohio. I live in Delaware, the state, full time, but I'm in Ohio probably every 4 months because visiting friends, visiting family, like I just miss it all the time. And, just enjoy the time that you have while you have it. Be my biggest closing thought.
It is all good if that's everything that we have. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here. The second half of these programs is a Q&A opportunity, a networking opportunity, but it is not recorded for a reason. It's one of those you have to be present to win opportunities. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this,